My name's Danielle, and I'm the treasurer of Alpha Sigma Nu here on campus. And this event is sponsored by Alpha Sigma Nu. Alpha Sigma Nu is a Jesuit Honor Society here at John Carroll, and this is our first of hopefully many events to come. So a little background for those who don't know what Alpha Sigma Nu is. Going into your junior year, if you have a 3.5 or higher, you're eligible. You'll get an email saying you're eligible to apply, and then your application and the process will be based on your how you distinguish yourselves in scholarship, loyalty, and the ideals of the Jesuit education and service to others while you're at John Carroll. So now I'm just going to turn the event over to the man that needs no introduction. Dr. Welki's been at John Carroll for almost 32 years this fall as an econ professor in the Bowler School of Business. And let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me if I just project my voice? Because I'd feel a lot more comfortable in that particular venue.
You speak really loud.
I can speak really loud. Thank you. I guess I would just like to first of all say thank you to all of you. I would have never imagined being here. I'm flattered and honored. I've been wigged out about this for weeks now. It probably does for you, or does for me what it does for you guys on a regular basis, taking you way, way out of your comfort zones. I'm a creature of comfort. I like to be in comfortable places. And so from that particular standpoint, as I started to think about that, first of all, when I heard last lecture and you look up the premise or the underlying theme, it's like, holy cow, what do they know that I don't know? Have they been talking to Father Niehoff and I'm going to be like escorted out of here, services no longer required when this is over? But then when I started to think about it, I kept thinking about trying to figure out ways to drag it back into my comfort zone. For those of you, anybody in here who's taken MN 202? Under no circumstances are you to let Dr. Lee know that I have note cards. So I started to think about this idea of last lectures. And in some sense, I've given a bunch of, quote, last lectures because at the end of every semester, there's a last class before a final exam. And so I use that as sort of the architecture to think about my theme and how I wanted to sort of approach this. So I started to reflect a little bit on the idea of, well, what usually takes place in that last class? Well, by then, most kids are tired. They don't want to hear any more material. They don't want to take any more notes. And all of the questions, if you offer them the opportunity to ask, are questions that revolve around what? The final exam. And so I thought of it in the context of my remarks will be sort of couched in the idea of final exam / final assignment / I don't know, final project, whichever way you can put your head around this particular idea. And so I guess the important thing to recognize is that this final exam that you're approaching is not a take-home exam or a sit-in-class exam, but it's really a take-everywhere exam. And at some level, it's part assignment, and it's part test, and it's part portfolio. And so one of the questions that invariably comes up in that last class is the question of, well, what kind of tests are going, or excuse me, what kind of questions are going to be on the final exam? And the reality is that any kind of question is really fair game for what's next. So you can expect true-false questions. You can expect essay questions. You can expect multiple choice questions. We anticipate that there will be really no practice tests put out there to look at. There's going to be no final exam on reserve, so I can see what the questions are in advance to study for them. And it's really a much, much different kind of exam. And I just decided that it would be helpful to give you some examples of the kinds of questions that have been on final exams for previous people that we've all sort of dealt with or thought about. One would be like a simple true and false question. It is okay to do fill in the blank, because I don't think anyone will ever find out. True or false? Well, I think all of us at some point in time are going to wrestle with that particular kind of question. Or we might imagine an essay question like the following. I completely trusted that person. Why would they do something like that to me? Not an easy question to answer. And they'll certainly happen in once, twice, maybe multiple times in your life, unfortunately. And I think it's always good to sort of wrap your head around the context of what that says about the kind of behavior that you want to carry out. Or one could imagine a multiple choice question. You and your best friend are in the same class. The class is your strength, but not so much for your friend. Additionally, there's a lot of current personal drama in your friend's life. It's very late the night before a test in that class. Your friend, woefully unprepared. Monitoring during past tests was very lax. Your friend asks you to make your exam answers easily accessible to him or her during the test. You should. Option A. Under the extenuating circumstances, agree to do that, but make it very clear it will never happen again. B. Tell your friend to contact the instructor and discuss any possible options that might exist. C. Agree to help during the exam, but then sit in a place where that's not possible. D. Offer to help your friend get better prepped for the test, but say you won't do anything during the test. These kinds of questions pop up. The other important thing to recognize about this test/assignment is that both the questions and the assignments occur randomly. You never know when a question's going to pop up. You never know when an assignment is going to be given to you. The important takeaway, I think, is to embrace them all and don't wish any of them away, because they're all there for a particular reason. And then another student will raise their hand and they'll say, well, how long do we have for the test? Will I have enough time to complete it? This exam is open-ended. We don't know how much time we have. Could be weeks, could be months, could be years. All we know is that at some random time, this final exam, final project is going to be over. I wish I had a more precise answer than that. I've witnessed too many college kids go through John Carroll who never in their wildest dreams think that their assignment was going to be taken from them at times when it was. But that's the reality of the circumstances we all face. So I guess the moral of that particular story is to make decisions to use your time wisely, because it's all a gift and you're never really sure how long any of it's going to last. Parts of the test will drag. Is this ever going to be over with? My gosh, I just wish this would go away. Do not wish away any time whatsoever. It's all incredibly important, and important lessons will be learned. I learned that lesson in a funny sort of way. Back in the 80s, I would regularly drive home to visit my Sibs, and most of them all live in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. So I had an exactly 240-mile drive across beautiful Route 80 in Pennsylvania. For anybody that's familiar with it, it is like absolutely mind-numbing. There is nothing out there at all. And I would make this trip maybe once a month. And I could imagine, and there were regularly, I would get to the Pennsylvania, Ohio border, and I would think to myself, boy, I wish that I could just sort of snap my fingers, have the time fly by, and I would be at the exit that I would get off, and I would trade the 4 hours for not having to endure the 4 hours. It would have been late 80s, Memorial Day weekend. I was making that particular drive. As I was going, it was a gorgeous sunny day. Mother Nature had to make a call. So I'm driving along and I find a state roadside rest. I go into this roadside rest and I walk in. And in there, at that point in time, they had these things that you could talk into, but they hung on a wall. And there's this guy talking, and he is just bellowing and bellowing and bellowing. And he's about the size of a doorway. I just walked by, I didn't really pay much attention, but I noticed on his hand, he has this ring about the size of a golf ball. Weird, do my business, come wandering out. Yeah, the Celtics last night, because it was a Celtics-Lakers NBA series, and he was ranting on about that. And I take a quick look, and I go, he looks familiar, and I walk out into the parking lot, and sitting out there in the parking lot is the Madden Cruiser. The guy on the phone is John Madden. He's there yapping and yapping and yapping away. I'm like wigged out. They got a bunch of goons walking around. They were all probably offensive linemen that he travels with. I don't know if you know, John Madden's like deathly afraid of flying, will not get on a plane, takes a bus everywhere on the planet. Hopefully he doesn't try to go to Hawaii. So I go out, I get his autograph. To this day, I sort of cherish that autograph, but for a different kind of reason. It was nice to get his autograph. He's famous, but so what? The more important lesson I got was, you know, if I would have been granted my wish and would have, at the end of that borderline, snapped my fingers, traded the 4 hours, ended up at exit 240, got my car off the road, that was an experience I would have missed. Something I would have never had. So from that particular standpoint, that particular time on, I know it's really easy to say, gosh, I wish this was over. There were parts of time when I was thinking today, gosh, I wish this talk was over already. But the reality is there are lessons to be learned and things you're supposed to get from each of those particular experiences. So don't wish any of them away. How would you prepare for the final? If I could give you, students say, well, what should we study? How should we prepare? Well, I guess I would simply say, one, go back and look at your previous tests. There have been various points in time when you've been tested in a wide variety of circumstances, challenged for trust, for honesty, for integrity, for whatever, for friendship. There were lessons that you learned there. Those lessons are probably timeless sorts of lessons, so these kinds of tests are going to show up over and over and over again. So it's not as though they're going to be exactly the same, but they're going to be dressed up in very much the same way. The other thing that I think is incredibly important to recognize is that you are a member of a study group, whatever you think of it. Or maybe better yet, a learning group. And like most groups, you're going to get to choose some members of that group. But then there are going to be a bunch of members of that group that are just sort of randomly assigned to you. They could be co-workers, they could be your in-laws, they could be all shapes and sizes of people. And it's going to be very easy to want to sort of discard all the random members. I mean, how many people have been in assigned group settings and thought to themselves, boy, I wish I didn't have this member on my group. How can we kick him off? Let's go talk to the professor. How do we get rid of him? Pretty standard stuff. We all understand that. They're all randomly assigned. But the beauty of the group is there's really no limit to the size of this study group that you can assemble for yourself. It's as big or as small as you choose it to be. as I thought about the issue of who I would want for the members that I choose, I guess the members that I would choose would be members that I know will always tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. Because when you face these decisions, it's really, really easy to surround yourself with a bunch of people who are going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. My guess is if you surround yourself with those kinds of people, you're going to find yourself making decisions that aren't really the best decisions for you. Sometimes you just need to hear certain kinds of things to reorient yourself, give you a slightly different perspective. So you need to be able to have the confidence to trust that this person is always going to tell me what they perceive to be in my best interest. They don't necessarily have to agree with you, but I think it's really important that you're willing to listen to what it is they have to say. The randomly assigned members are probably more important than you think. By a show of hands, how many people in here chose their parents? So I'm assuming every single one of you, by some grace, was giving the set of parents that you have, randomly. And it's oftentimes those random gifts, or excuse me, those random members teach you or give you some of the greatest gifts that you could ever imagine. I found this lesson out the hard way, in the following sense. When I was growing up, I didn't see eye to eye with my dad on anything. He had his own set of personal demons, challenges, and all the rest. Probably spent too much time nursing long necks and other assorted beverages of that particular style. And so, you know, we got to a point where we didn't even talk to each other. I just had no use for the guy. He was, in my mind, a zero. He was forced me to probably grow up faster than a kid should have to grow up, but it wasn't a choice I got to make. But I certainly was upset about it, and essentially just, you know, like some people, you put them on a discard pile of life and ignore them and move on. You should never have to do that with one of your parents, but I was an idiot, and we'll accept that as where I was at that particular stage. It wasn't until, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years after he died that I realized, through the benefit of going on a retreat, that he had given me what I consider to be the greatest gift that I possess. My faith is really important to me. It's been a rock, and it's been an important source of strength. The only reason that I have that is him. He was Catholic. My mom was Protestant. He made us go to church. He made us do all of that sort of stuff. He never went. That wasn't his job. He was doing other sorts of things. But it wasn't until I started to reflect on that particular little piece of the puzzle that I realized that here was somebody that I thought had given me absolutely nothing. But the flip side is, had given me the greatest thing that I possess, in some sense. Because, I mean, at one level, it's not something that can be taken away from you. So I think, from that particular standpoint, it becomes important for every single one of these random people, whether they're your parents, randomly assigned, or just people that you come into contact with, there's a reason they're there. I don't know what it is, could be big, could be little, but I think that's what you want to look for in that particular situation, rather than being like me, immediate to dismiss and say there's no value there. I guess the other random person that came into my life would simply be my son. You know, I've come to believe that sort of life is what happens to you while you're busy making plans. So I had this wonderful set of plans of how my life was going to play out. And through sheer circumstances, my son was born. The valuable lesson I learned about that is that sometimes people think that they have children because they want to help raise the child. I think the world's upside down there. I think when you have children, the child is there to help you grow up. Because what you're going to find out is just what is important, what's valuable, and you're going to mature in ways that you never thought possible because they're going to teach you so much more about who you are. So, another random person that has a significant role. Well, who the heck grades this exam? Well, graders are going to be, well, let me start by rewind that a little bit. Let's start with the recognition that on this exam there are going to be no perfect papers. So if that's what your aspirations are, my hunch is you're going to be disappointed because it isn't going to happen. As far as I know, there's only been sort of one perfect paper. We're celebrating a season related to that perfect paper that will culminate in about a week or so. Okay? But other than that, everybody else, no perfect scores. So maybe the mantra should be, I'm just going to do my best. And what that is what that is, as long as you know that it's your best. In terms of what they're going to be grading, I think it's important to recognize that it's not going to be the quantity of the materials that you put together, but the quality. Sometimes it's really easy to do bunches and bunches and bunches of things, but you do them at a very superficial level. I think the quality of your experiences are going to be determined by the depth of them rather than the breadth of them. So pick a few things and whatever it is, all in, because that's the way you get to make a difference. In terms of these randomly assigned graders, heck, they're going to be strangers, they're going to be friends, they're going to be family members, they're going to be you. And in terms of those, they're all randomly assigned. They all tend to have different grading scales. They all have different sets of expectations. Some are going to grade on a curve. Some aren't going to cut you any slack at all. You need to accept that fact that you're always under observation. And how you choose to react to people, how you choose to interact with people, that's an important piece. And a grade is being registered in somebody's head about the quality of your assignment on that particular day. But the hardest grader, it seems to me, is going to be yourself. I can't speak for most of you out there, but I know that I tend to be incredibly hard on myself, very unforgiving. It's funny in the sense that strangers will forgive me much more readily than I'll forgive myself. And that is an incredibly challenging world to live in. Because I also tend to, it'd be like taking the final exam and having the grader punish you for a bunch of previous mistakes. Once a mistake has been made, okay, learn the lesson, but we tend to sort of punish ourselves for mistakes, and we go back and say, well, remember you made that mistake back then? And so it's almost like you're tearing, scabs off of old wounds. You need to be more accepting of the fact that you're human, that you're going to make mistakes, that you need to move past them, and it's okay to learn the lesson and go forward and not be quite as demanding, I guess, of yourself. Any other helpful hints? Well, I guess just a few. One, don't self-label yourself, or don't let other people label you. I regularly hear people come in saying, well, I'm not good in this subject, or I'm not good in this, or my teachers have always told me that. Everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses, but it's not like, you know, maybe if in the travel setting we want to travel light. Stop dragging around baggage that people have given you at previous points in your life. Can't do this, not good at that, he's always done this, whatever the case might be. Leave that stuff on the curb, just move on. Don't drag around things that really, all they do is slow you down in where you're trying to get to. Don't allow them to set artificial limits. From a planning perspective, if you want to plan, I think it's great, but make sure you live by a project planner, not your day planner. How many in here have a day planner? They run their lives, and that's okay, but I think sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, people organizing time and all the rest, that we lose sight of these are supposed to be plans leading to some kind of big picture. And so we want to focus on the bigger picture rather than what is my sort of checklist of obligations for today. And I guess the last observation that I would like to make is just simply the following. Don't look at other people's exams. And by that I simply mean that everybody's taking their own unique test. No two exams are alike. Everybody's in a different set of circumstances, and it's very easy for us to want to look on other exams for advice, or guidance, or answers, or whatever the case might be. They're not taking the same test. They're not in the same situation. They haven't had the same set of life experiences. Their answers for them won't necessarily be the right answers for you. But I think it's very easy to get caught up in this looking comparison kind of world. The goal is about you figuring out who you are. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to wish you all good luck. And I want to let you know that you can start your tests right now.